This video was written by What If Football. He also wrote the treble winning series, which I am in the middle of releasing. The playlist with those episodes will be linked in the description below, and the future episodes should be out soon. And also check out his channel, which will be linked in the description as well. But in this one-off video, we will be looking at Manchester United's love-hate relationship with the League Cup. But before I go any further, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's video, OneFootball, which has become my favourite football app because it has everything you need to keep up to date with the latest news and transfers, providing you with articles to read as well as videos to watch, whilst also being excellent for keeping up to date with all the matches from across the world that are going on, providing a live ticker as well as match ratings and statistics, whilst also allowing you to check your team stats from across the whole season. If you're sick of having to use Google and Twitter to search for news and stats that you want to see, then the OneFootball app is definitely the app for you, so I'll leave it linked in the description below, and by downloading the app you will be helping to support the channel. So the League Cup, also known as the red-headed stepchild of the English football game at the top level, will conclude this season on the weekend, with Manchester United facing Newcastle in the final on Sunday. And to be honest, it's a type of trophy that you don't really care about until your team has the slightest hint of winning it. Football with its immediacy is inherently fickle. The importance of this trophy, like for most elite clubs, comes and goes with the wind. Having said that, the forthcoming 2023 League Cup final pits two enormous clubs in Manchester United and Newcastle against each other, with both clubs currently in the midst of a trophy drought. And arguably it's never held as much importance to Manchester United, now on their way to a 6th year without a trophy. United opted into the inaugural staging of the League Cup back in 1960-61, where 5 clubs withdrew, including the then double winners Tottenham Hotspur. Yes, you did hear that right. The club's first lineup in the competition, a first round 1-1 draw against 4th Division Exeter City, reads like a who's who of United legends. Harry Gregg kept goal, and the future European winners Shea Brennan, Nobby Stiles and Bill Foulkes all started, whilst the club's 5th top goalscorer of all time, Dennis Weiler, also featured. The replay the following week featured Tony Dunn, mere weeks into his 535 game stint at the club. Stiles featured as well as Johnny Giles and Albert Quexel. In other words, they took the game moderately seriously and won out 4-1. However, they would fall at Valley Parade to another 4th tier side in Bradford City, thanks to a quick-fire second half double. Again though, the lineup that Matt Busby opted for showed no real disdain for the opposition or competition, with the majority of his strongest 11 deployed. The likes of Brennan, Dunn, Foulkes and Stills all remained by the next time United played in a League Cup fixture, a mere 6 years later. In the interim, withdrawals from the Football League teams had risen from 5 in its inaugural season to between 9 and 12 in the next half decade. By 66, only Liverpool and Everton had opted out, whilst Arsenal, Spurs and Wolves were only making their debuts in the Cup's 7th edition. Suspicion around the competition was rife in English football, with previous snubs of the World Cup and Euros bleeding into the club game, and United were not alone in shunning it. A 5-1 defeat at Bloomfield Road was the result, despite a strong 11 only missing Alex Stepney, Brian Kidd and Bobby Charlton from the squad that won the club's inaugural European Cup. And so United quickly scurried back into withdrawal, as did Tottenham Hotspur, the only 2 teams who missed the competition. Whilst United were busy winning the European Cup, on the other side of the Pennines, Leeds were crowned League Cup champions after a 7-match campaign. United were the sole team to decline a spot in the 1968-69 edition, before finally the full roster of the 92 Football League teams were present for the subsequent year's campaign. The return to the League Cup saw the first appearance in the competition for Bobby Charlton, as well as new manager Wilf McGuinness. In what would become a notoriously rocky period for the club attempting to succeed the dynasty of Sir Matt Busby, United fared reasonably well in the competition. Successive semi-finals were achieved, first against Manchester City in a 4-3 aggregate defeat, whereby 2/3 of the Holy Trinity scored goals, Law and Charlton. The subsequent year, Aston Villa bowed United out 3-2 on aggregate, with both of United's goals coming from Brian Kidd. But in 1980 and 81, the club recorded 4 successive defeats in the competition for the only time, and all by the same scoreline of 1-0, in the days of 2-legged second rounds. In each contest, the names of United greats tripped off the tongue. McIlroy, Coppell, Macari, Robson, Wilkins. But finally, at the 16th time of asking, United finally reached the League Cup final of 1983 under Ron Atkinson. Atkinson would deliver 2 FA Cups in his 5 years at the club and would eventually lift the League Cup with Sheffield Wednesday and Aston Villa in the 90s, but unfortunately came up short at Wembley against Liverpool for Manchester United. Throughout the run to the final against Bournemouth, Bradford, Southampton, Nottingham Forest, Arsenal and Liverpool, there was a distinct nucleus of players. Gary Bailey, Mike Duxbury, Arthur Albiston and Frank Stapleton played all 9 fixtures in the competition. Remy Moses, Gordon McQueen, Arnold Mulren and Steve Coppell only missed 1. Meanwhile, Ray Wilkins was the only starter in the final who had accrued less than 7 appearances throughout. In the doldrums of Alex Ferguson's time at the club, the focus was very much on the league title, given the drought in that department from 1967. The 20th anniversary had passed quickly within his first season, as did the 25th in 1992. In approach to the 90s, United fell to some respectable teams of the time. Tottenham came to Old Trafford and humiliated them 3-0 in October 1989, while successful Wembley teams in Oxford United and Wimbledon would both eliminate United in 1987-88 and 88-89. Although it was the league that was the end goal in Ferguson's early tenure, the Cups were invaluable in stabilising his position at Old Trafford and bringing the supporters back on side. It took 6 months from the fabulous Tara Fergie sign for United to claim their first trophy of the Ferguson regime, the 1990 FA Cup, which was quickly followed upon by the Cup Winners' Cup in Rotterdam over Barcelona, and the Super Cup against Red Star Belgrade. In and amongst were the trio of League Cup finals lost in 1991 and 1994 to Sheffield Wednesday and Aston Villa respectively, whilst United finally captured a trophy in 1992. The value that Ferguson placed on cup competitions was evident with a strong selection in the second leg of the 1990 tie against Halifax Town that only 22,000 supporters bothered to turn out for. The tie was effectively already won with a 3-1 win at the Shea, but Ferguson still played the likes of Clayton Blackmore, Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, Dennis Irwin, Brian McClare and Mark Hughes, who were all major fixtures in the team, as well as his temporary number 1 at the time, Les Seeley. 18 months later, via Brian McClare's winner at Wembley against Brian Clough's Nottingham Forest, United had finally won the League Cup. From Aston Villa's inaugural win in 1961, it took Manchester United 31 years to lift the trophy. For comparison, it took Chelsea just 4 years to win their first League Cup, Leeds 7, Manchester City 9, Spurs 10, Forest 17, Liverpool 20, Arsenal 26, and clubs like Everton still haven't won it. Rather the disinterest in the 1970s and 80s that held United back from winning the trophy, it was the lack of quality amidst the sparest of times in terms of silverware that boiled down to the long wait for the trophy. By 1994, United had the chance to compete for the first ever English domestic treble, but lost to 2 late Dean Saunders goals, and that day it was only the suspended Peter Schmeichel that was missing from United's full strength 11, an 11 that had played with one another in over a dozen league fixtures. By 1999, the uses of rotation grip in football, Manchester United played their quote-unquote strongest 11 just the once in the Premier League throughout their treble-winning season. Furthermore, whilst United would have killed for a League Cup during the leaner times, they were now effectively fighting on 4 fronts, and so were reticent about spreading their squad too thin in a season that could feature over 60 games. Therefore, the least glamorous silverware took a hit at the time. Defeats such as against York City in 1995, Leicester City in 96, and Ipswich in 97 were saved for players of the calibre of Phil Mulren, Johnny Curtis, and perpetual stand-in goalkeeper Raymond van der Gaal. After United went down 3-0 against Aston Villa in the 3rd round of the League Cup, a mere 5 months after the treble was complete, BBC reported the credibility of the Worthington Cup was again thrown into doubt, as a mixture of Manchester United youngsters and reserves were turfed out for the competition. This was a time where the FA had already pressured the club to forge ahead with their participation in the Club World Cup at the expense of the FA Cup, with the BBC noting that Ferguson had a known contempt for the competition, to use their own words. However, former United coach René Meulenstein told a different tale. Speaking after United's qualification for the 2023 final on Radio 5 Live, he claimed that Ferguson would always ask, "What are we going to win this year?" and said that the Scot knew of the competition's importance despite resting players for some on fixtures. With the Champions League bloated to 2 group stages and a potential 17 fixtures, there was little wonder that the League Cup was discarded, and the likes of Ronnie Woolwork, Michael Twiss and Daniel Nardiello got trotted out for minutes. The Champions League would revert to the format we know today in 2003, the same year that United returned to the final of the League Cup, in a defeat to Liverpool. This marked an 8-year run of 4 finals and 3 won, coming at a time where United were their most successful. The only season in which United didn't win a League Cup fixture between 2002 and 2010 was the season they went on to win the Champions League in 2008. Whilst the aforementioned mixture of youth and reserve would get ruled out for the earlier rounds, it's important to stress that the rotational policy didn't usually extend to the final itself. In 2003 and 2017, United's team was at full strength. In 2006, Ferguson only sidelined Ruud van Nistelrooy due to an internal dispute between the Dutchman and Cristiano Ronaldo. In 2010, the only rest was handed to Wayne Rooney, who was almost single-handedly carrying the squad in the immediate aftermath of the departures of both Cristiano Ronaldo and Carlos Tevez. 2009 does remain the outlier, but perhaps with good reason, with Ferguson making 6 changes after an away Champions League fixture at the San Siro. This was the only occasion where United had faced a Champions League game either immediately before or after a League Cup final. Pertinent comparisons can be made between European away games and fixtures in other competitions. Ferguson made 9 changes between a Champions League win in Porto and an FA Cup semi-final loss to Everton inside 4 days in April 2009. Or in February 2010, where Ferguson changed 4 players after a win in Milan for a league loss at Everton just 4 days later. Half of those changes for the 2009 final though were regular first teamers such as Paul Scholes, Nani and Carlos Tevez. Of the other half, Ben Foster would win the game's man of the match, Darren Gibson would later start in big occasions such as the Champions League semi-final against Schalke, and Danny Welbeck was later used as a rotational option up front. Now with a final to come and Erik ten Hag largely not straying too far from his consistent 11, United are now blessed with a manager who knows the importance of getting on board in terms of trophies, like Bob Paisley, Jose Mourinho and Brian Clough before him. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that video, check out my other series with What If Football, which will be linked in the description below. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when my videos come out. Put your thoughts in the comment section, and you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter for more content as well.